I've encountered this situation where a relational partner revealed some information that you thought was a little too personal and maybe made you feel uncomfortable. Maybe you felt like your level of intimacy with that relational partner just did not merit them telling you what they told you. Well, self-disclosure is a tricky thing, and we're going to navigate the waters of self-disclosure and seeking and providing feedback within relationships. And this is not all cut and dry, and some of the guidelines that I'm going to provide for you, of course there would be exceptions for, but we're going to progress through this, and what we're going to do is we're going to begin with learning a little bit more about an underlying theory that affects self-disclosure, and that would be social penetration theory. At its core, social penetration theory looks at how we progress through relationships in stages. We've already looked at the different stages of relationships. When you begin in the initiation and orientation stage, you move to relational maintenance, and then you have the disengagement stage of relationships. Now, in social penetration theory, basically, it assumes that you have different levels of relationships. You have those people which are what we consider to be acquaintances. You see them on a regular basis, you talk to them, you have regular interaction with them, but you don't necessarily have much depth to that interaction. Then you have your family and friends, and maybe even certain coworkers that you feel like you can open up to a little bit more, so you feel like they know a little bit more about who you are. And then you have intimates. And really at the core of these different levels would be a soulmate. And very few people will ever penetrate to the deepest core of who you are, in the sense that you would disclose completely and openly with them and feel comfortable and safe within that relationship. Now, to better understand some of the components of social penetration theory, I want to introduce you to the theorists behind it. Altman and Taylor proposed social penetration theory in the early 1970s. It was a really broad attempt to describe the increasing level of intimacy that's achieved through relationships as they progress through stages. And it is a really broad theory. And in fact, a lot of different people that are researching interpersonal communication have come along and they've used social penetration theory in various ways. However, it's been very difficult to study the theory as a whole and to really sort of prove if it's true or false, because it's really difficult. In order to do so, what you would have to do is you'd have to identify individuals and their relational partners and follow them really through the lifespan of that relationship. And in order to study a relationship like that, it would entail basically a lifelong commitment of both the researcher and the people that are involved in those relationships. And so that makes it very difficult in order to necessarily prove the veracity of this theory. However, many of the components of this theory are very important for us understanding how self-disclosure affects our relationships. Altman and Taylor outlined their theory in the book Social Penetration, The Development of Interpersonal Relationships in 1973, and it's really a staple for interpersonal relationships and studying that. A really great metaphor that is used in social penetration theory is that of an onion. And while it makes you cry and it doesn't necessarily have the best scent on your breath, it really is a good description for what goes on in self-disclosure. And that is, you have breadth and you have depth to self-disclosure. Breadth would be the wide range of topics that are discussed in a relationship, and the feeling that at a certain point, the level of intimacy in the relationship may merit that no topic is taboo, and you don't have to avoid any topics because there's such breadth involved. Also, there can be great depth involved in intimacy and sharing information, where you feel like you can add specifics and you can open up about your emotions and your reactions to what's going on. So there's breadth and depth, and the greater breadth and the greater depth, the greater level of intimacy or the greater level of penetration in terms of this theory would be achieved. Social penetration theory really has at its core self-disclosure, because that is how you achieve breadth and depth in your relationships. Relational partners begin with superficial disclosures. Hey, how you doing? What's your major? And you feel the need usually to reciprocate. That is, when someone asks you what your major is, you feel the need to then ask them what their major is. And that's how it goes in a relationship. And we tend to reciprocate that particular level of self-disclosure. And that's not a universal law. It's not that you have to do that. It's just a norm within our culture.